I'd like to open up tonight with something that I think is a tremendous eye-opener, particularly to the times we're living in. We are now in the month of Adar Bet, the great month of Adar. Did you ever think for a moment, why was the month of Adar chosen to be the month alongside the great month of Nisan? We know that the month of Nisan, Ben-Nisan, Niga'alu Yisrael, u'ben-Nisan, Atidin Ligael. So to put Adar right up against the month of Geula, it has to tell you that Adar is meant as a preparation for the month of Nisan. Just like you have Shabbat, you have Erev Shabbat. Just like you have Nisan, you have Erev Nisan, the month of Adar. What is this relationship? And I'm not spending the entire night on this, but this is something that is so powerful that I think it's going to put a lot into perspective of what we can be zochet to this month, and maybe what we can look forward to this month. My Rebbe told me today, Rabbi Shalom Rabinovich Shalita, he said it in the name of one of the great tzaddikim. He says that there was Ani ve'Evyon. He was Ani Marud. He was not just poor, but he was in dire straits. He lived in a house that was a hovel. Mamash, in the worst of neighborhoods, in poverty of poverty. His home was falling apart. The ceiling was caving in. The walls were falling at its sides. And he had no way, no means to do anything for his situation. He came up with a brilliant idea. Brilliant idea. Incredible mind. He took out a pen and paper because that's basically all he had left in the house. And he wrote the most magnificent letter to the king. But such a letter, with such machma'ot, with such compliments, with such a warmth, with such a love. The letter literally sang the love and the praises that he felt for his king. And then after that he put down this beautiful array of accolades, compliments, till finally he ends the letter, Your Majesty, you see how much I feel about you, how much I love you. Your Majesty, the greatest honor that you can bestow on me, someone, a simple man living in your kingdom, is to come by and stay in my home with me for a night. And he signs it sincerely, his name with his address. And with the last pennies of prutot, he goes and he delivers it to the castle, to the king in the big city. Now, I don't have to tell you, when this letter got to the castle, and the king's men, the ones that go through, I would assume, the incoming mail on the daily basis, they start going through the letters, and they come across this letter, and it caught their eye. And they open up the letter, and they start to smile one at each other, and they say, look at this. I mean, this is a joke. I mean, who does this guy think he is? Look at the zip code. Look at the area, the neighborhood where this guy lives. He lives in the poorest neighborhood of the kingdom. We know the houses there. They're falling apart. And look at this guy. He writes so beautifully. He writes so majestically. But yet, he's Ani Marud. We can tell from the paper. From the low-grade paper. And yet, at the end of the letter, he has the chutzpah to ask the king to come and stay by him for a night, to honor him with the king's presence. Who does this guy think he is? He's asking the king. This wasn't just a king. This was like a superpower king. This was like a king of kings. He's asking the king to come stay by his house. His house is a hovel. His house is a broken down shack. And you're inviting the King of Kings This is a joke. They were laughing so hysterically. They were laughing so boisterously, so loud, that the laughter woke up the king in the inner chamber. And the king comes walking out and says, what is the hysteria, the laughter about? I mean, I've never heard you guys laugh this hard. What's so funny? What's going on in the kingdom that I don't know about? So no, your majesty, it was just something ridiculous. I haven't got a letter in the mail. It's ridiculous. It's just a big joke. I mean, this guy is hilarious. The king says, what? Tell me. I want to know. What? No, your majesty, it's ridiculous. Just let it be. It's nothing. The king says, listen, if it got you guys who don't laugh at anything to laugh that hard, I want to know about it. I want you to read me that letter verbatim, word by word. Okay, your majesty, if you say so. They crinkle and unfold the letter, and they start reading from the beginning. And as they're reading, the king, his eyes start to open wide. Wow. Listen to the way this guy writes about me. And listen to the compliments and the magnificent accolades. Listen to the words, the emotion that's behind those words. I haven't heard someone, any subject in my kingdom, even the high echelon, that spoke about me like this. And then he hears the end of the letter, your majesty. There's nothing that would bring me great honor to have you come by and stay by me in my simple home for even one night. This would complete my love for you. And they start laughing. I say, your majesty, this guy is a joker. Who does he think he is? He's asking you, the great king, to come to his broken down shack. Your majesty says, this is ridiculous, a big joke. The king says, no, my friends. In a long time, I haven't heard someone so loving and warm and emotional about speaking about my compliments and my honor. He struck a chord by me. I'm going to take him up on his offer. I'm going to go down to his shack, and I'm going to stay there with him one night. I want to see who this is. Who feels about me this warm, such emotion, such love. I must meet this man, even if I have to stay a night by him. They start looking at each other like, this is impossible. This is not happening. This is ridiculous. Your majesty, you're going to the projects. You don't know where you're going. King says, I don't care. If you think it's a place that's not befitting for me, so go out there and do something about it. Set it up, prepare it, so that it'll be something that I can actually come to. So they look at each other and they say, okay. And the next day, all the king's horses and all the king's men are out down, ripping through the roads of the kingdom to this very modest neighborhood of poverty. And they come up to the address of the guy who wrote the letter. They knock on the door. And he looks through the window and he sees the white steeds. And he says he can't believe it. Men in royal garments. He opens the door. His Majesty found great chen, great favor in your letter. And he's going to take you up on your offer. But you understand that this house is falling to pieces. So we're going to spend the next 2 months building out of this broken down shack of a house in Armon. We're going to build a castle out of your house so that it'll be befitting, so that when the king does come to you, it'll be a place that he actually can enter according to his honor. And the poor man smiles to himself and he says, it worked. It worked. I invited the king to me, and now they're going to build me a castle. And now I'm going to have the king stay by me, and because the king is going to come to me, I'm finally going to have a house to live in, because there's no way, as I anticipated, that the king can come to me unless the house is befitting. My Rebbe says, in the name of one of the great tzaddikim, he says, the name, Adar, Aleph, Dar. Aleph, Ehad, Yahid Umyuhad, the one and only, En Od Milvado. Aleph, Ehad, Dar. He comes down in this month to live by us, and he tries to prepare us for a great Geula. And because of that, says my Rebbe, when the king comes down to live by you, they need to come and clear up all the ba'ayot that there are by you in order to make your place befitting for the king to be able to come down and live in. So because of that, Adar is a month of miracles. Adar is a month that all the things that went wrong up until now in the year, v'nahafochu, is flipped over, is fixed, is taken care of. All the troubles that people are in this month, they can be pulled out. All the issues they have, the problems they have, in this month can be turned around. Because everything needs to be fixed by the people that the Aleph Dar, the one and only, is coming down to live by you. And in order for him to come to you, your place has to be fixed up. Your life has to be fixed up. What can we be zochet to now in this month? They're looking to fix up your life in this month. They're looking to fix up everything in the world that you have difficulties with. All the issues of your life, all the issues of your home, your family, your parnasah. When you're in pain and troubles, this is an abode that the king can come down to. Adar, Aleph, Dar. The Echad wants to come down and be Dar and live by the Jewish people. So this is the month that the angels come running down with all types of berachot and all types of yeshuot and all types of v'nahafochu. This is a month that if you have a problem with goyim, take him to court this month. This is the month that we win cases. This is the month that we win battles. This is the month that we win wars. This is the month of Mazal. Why? Because Adar, the Aleph, is coming to be Dar, down by Klal Yisrael. And in order for it to be a place that he can come down to and be comfortable in, Kiviyachol, all the problems have to be taken care of first. Wow. What a month. What an etratzon. What a zchut. And that's why the tefillot in this month are fantastic. The mazal of this month for Klal Yisrael, unbelievable. The Yeshuot, as we get closer, Rabotai, we're coming this Shabbat to Parashat Zachor. And in that parasha, we're going to be Macho Timche Et Zecher Amalek. But what does that mean? That doesn't just mean to go banging on the floor when it's read in shul. It's more than that. That is to bring you to the real Mechiat Amalek. Amalek stood for creating doubt between the Jew and his maker. Amalek stood for creating safek in the belief of a Jew in Hashem. The minute we erase him, the minute we're machol timche et zecher Amalek, we get rid of that doubt. We get rid of that safek. And that's the moment that everything is set for the landing strip, for Borei Olam to come down on us in our homes on the day that is even greater than Yom Kippur, the day of Purim itself. And this is why Parashat Zachor comes right before Purim. Because first, we got to destroy the Amalek inside every Jew, inside every home. Get rid of all your spekot. Get rid of all your questions. Get rid of all your issues. Clean up the house and clear it. All your problems of life is going to be set and taken care of and fixed to create a place, a home that Hashem can come down to with absolute emunah and bitachon. No svekot, no question, no issue. Hashem, come down to my house. Bless us. This great Chag Purim is going to be a time, like Chazal tell us, that when Mashiach comes, all the other Chagim will disappear. But Purim will stay. Because this is the Chag of no Safek. This is the Chag of Emunah Bitachon. This is the Chag that's going to bring back to us everything that we need to recapture as Klal Yisrael, including the Bayit Shalishi, including the coming of Mashiach. And that's why this month must be the preparation for Nisan, a Geula. First, we take care of all the problems, fix them up, create a place, Purim, that Borei Olam can come down amongst us. And then, like the night he came down from the Mitzrayim, comes the month of Nisan, we can be zochet to unbelievable Geula. Unbelievable. So Rabotai, the world is at the moment of war. And what's going on today in the world is beyond belief. And I'm not looking tonight to speak about the matziv in the world. I actually want to speak about that Wednesday night on the Emunah Bitachon class, because I think that's a little bit more mat'im of a subject to really go into this concept of what's going on today and how we should be reacting and how we shouldn't be reacting, without a doubt. But let's talk about going out to war. I want to share with you a thought and idea. And this is something that I'm hoping Borei Olam will give the right words. This is based on a Gemara Masechet Berachot on Daf Gimel Amud Bet that talks about a particular war that David HaMelech went out and sent the Jewish people into. You see, it was a time of famine. It was a time of hunger. Klal Yisrael desperately needed funds to be able to save the economy and the poverty in Israel. Daf Gimel Amud Bet, Masechet Berachot. So the rabbis early morning came to David HaMelech and they said, David, Klal Yisrael is in a very bad situation. We desperately need funds. We need some way to jumpstart the economy and to save the Jewish people from poverty. Now, little did David realize, the rabbis came to him with a certain agenda. You see, we all know the incredible story that when David was young and he was put up, or he volunteered to go up against the giant Goliath, the famous story of David and Goliath. We all know the incredible miracles that took place. But there's a certain piece of the story that Rabbi Yonatan Eibschitz writes about extensively. And that is that after David brought down the giant, with all the incredible miracles, we've spoken about this many times, David, he came to Shaul, he told Shaul that he's ready to go fight. He's a shepherd. He knows how to protect the sheep. He was able to rip open the mouth of a lion in the saving of his flock. Shaul thought it was a joke. And as Shaul just wanted to taunt David by taking his armor, his body armor, which Shaul was incredibly tall. The Gemara tells us that Shaul was from the tallest men of his generation. He was head and shoulders above everybody else. So his body armor must have been a very large size. Now David was just a boy. According to one opinion, he was 12. According to one opinion, he was 16. He was going to take this body armor of a very tall man and put it on a very small body, just to taunt and joke and show David that it's impossible that a small boy would go out and fight a giant. But the Midrash tells us that a miracle took place. And as David put his arms into the body armor, it actually shrunk down and fit him like a glove. It was a nes, it was a miracle. It was at that moment that Shaul realized, wait one second, this is not just a regular kid. And it was at that moment that Shaul realized that this is the one that Borei Olam sent. How beyond belief that would seem in the present situation of Goliath. But this is the one. So David was allowed to go out to fight the giant. He takes off the armor and explains to Shaul that Hashem is his armor. And he goes out with absolute emunah bitachon, only with a slingshot. And he rips that rock forward off of his slingshot, right between the eyes of the giant. In those years, the Philistines, the Pilishtim had these helmets, says the Midrash, and the Radak writes this, that had a certain guard that went over the nose. When the rock came straight at between the eyes of the giant, the rock commands the metal of the helmet to open up and allow passage for the rock to enter the head of the giant. The Midrash says that when the rock entered Goliath, it went out through the other side. It was an incredible shot. But the Midrash tells us the dialogue that went down between the rock and the metal. The rock said to the metal of the helmet, open up. I was sent by King David himself. David Melech Yisrael, you must open up. The metal says, but he's not king yet. And currently we're under the reign of Shaul. And Hashem doesn't allow the reign of one kingdom to overlap the reign of another kingdom, not by a hair's breadth. And if that's the case, I do not yet have to go to obey the word of David HaMelech. He's still not king. The rock says to the metal, if you open up, I will make you a deal. I will give you the right to take my place in the mitzvah of Brit Milah. Till that time, the Brit Milah was always done with a sharp rock. It was the circumcision, as the Orlah was circumcised, al yedei, a very sharp rock. Says the rock to the metal, if you're ready to open up in honor of King David, then I'll give you my place in the mitzvah. From now on, they won't use sharp rocks anymore. From now on, they'll use metal. They'll use a blade. When the metal heard that, it's going to get its place in the incredible mitzvah Brit Milah. It opened up. And the rock passed. And was able to bring down the giant. And David HaMelech was the victor. It was at that point that David HaMelech is brought home on what you would call a hero's parade. And says Rabbi Yonatan Eibshitz, the minhag in those years, similar to what happened with Yosef HaTzadik in Egypt, was that when they would bring home a hero from war that saved the nation, they would throw on him all their gold and all their silver and all their jewelry. So that day, David, the Pasuk tells us, they threw on him literally over 1 million pieces of silver and hundreds of thousands of bars of gold and jewelry and precious stones. He was the youngest billionaire in Jewish history. What did he do with all that money? He took it and he put it in warehouses. And he earmarked all the money to be zochet to build the Bet HaMikdash. His bucket list in life, his dream, more than anything else, was to be lucky enough to be the one to build the Bet HaMikdash. He wanted that more than anything else in life. And he wanted to self-fund it. He didn't want anyone's favors. He didn't want to go out and start making a building campaign. He didn't want to go out and start doing any sort of an appeal. He already had his money to have the zechut for himself earmarked for the building of the Bet HaMikdash, funded by David HaMelech. And he wouldn't touch the money for nothing. And he held it for that great moment, that great day. And here it is. Years later, he's now king. Early morning, Avot HaShachar. The rabbis come knocking early morning on the door of the castle of David HaMelech, and they say, Adoni HaMelech. The people are so impoverished, such poverty, there's such famine, that the people are in sakana. We desperately need funds. At first, David tells him, let one Jew give business to another Jew. They explained to him that's not going to be enough. That's not enough to go around to fix the economy. They gave the famous mashal that when you dig a hole in the ground and you try to refill the hole back up with the sand or the dirt that you just pulled out of it, its own dirt never fills the hole back completely. There's not enough to go around to fill the hole of the poverty of the Jewish people. And again, David gave different ideas till finally David said, okay, if that's the case, we have no choice. Go to war. The Gedud, go get the troops. Get the army. And it was at that point that they decided to go take over another country, and the spoils and the taxes and the booty of war that they're going to be bringing back will bring wealth to the Jewish people, and that will save the entire economy. According to Rabbi Yonatan Eibshitz, this was the reason why David was not zochet to build the Bet HaMikdash. Hashem said to David, there's blood on your hands. You went out and you did many wars. And because of that, your hands cannot build the Bet HaMikdash. And we always ask that great question, what do you mean? But the wars that David fought were all Melchemet Mitzvah. And the blood on his hands is the blood of Mitzvah. We gave that example about, could you imagine if you have a mohel that did 1,000 Brit Milah, and then God comes to him and says to the mohel, I'm sorry, after 1,000 Brit Milah, you have blood on your hands, so those hands can't build the Bet HaMikdash. I spent my whole life doing your great mitzvot. It's the blood of mitzvot. Says Rabbi Yonatan Eibshitz, it's correct. Hashem wasn't referring to the Milchemet Mitzvah. Hashem was referring to these unnecessary wars that they went out and fought and even had blood flow because David did not want to give up the money that he had in the houses of warehouses, because he had that put away for the Bet HaMikdash. And sure enough, later on, it's amazing. Hashem says, David, I wanted you, pikuach nefesh, to give your money to the people in poverty. And because you held it back, that money is now blood money. And that money will not be used for the Bet HaMikdash, and you will not build it. And sure enough, in the book of Melachim, Shlomo HaMelech builds it. Shlomo builds the Bet HaMikdash. And what does he do with the money in all the warehouses that his father left over? Says the Radak, he used it and dispersed it to the Aniyim of Klal Yisrael, to be able to give his father the tikkun of what he didn't originally do. At the end, the money went there anyways. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But before they went to war, the Gemara tells us something fascinating. The Gemara described to us the process of how they went to war. The Gemara says that after the king said, go to war, they went to a man by the name of Achitophel. Achitophel was brilliant. He was one of the advisors of David HaMelech, and he was the one that created the war strategy of how they're going to attack, and all the strategies on the battlefield of how to win a war. And after Achitophel wrote up the strategic game plan, so to speak, of how they're going to attack and go to war, the next step, they went to the Sanhedrin, says the Gemara. And the Sanhedrin would then adjourn. Rashi tells us that the Sanhedrin would give permission for them to go to war, and then the Sanhedrin would pray for them to succeed at war. It's very interesting. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky wanted to understand, Zechet Tzadik L'Bracha, the Mishnah in Sanhedrin tells us that the reason why they went to the Sanhedrin was actually to get the permission of their psak, that they are given the permission to go to war after the king gave the green light, not necessarily for the rabbis to pray for them. Says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, from here, from this Rashi, you see that there was a dual responsibility for the rabbis when asked if you should go to war. One is to give you the permission, But second, they have a responsibility to pray that you succeed as well. Says Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, this is a big message for all the rabbis out there in Klal Yisrael, for all the rebbes out there in Klal Yisrael, that when someone comes and turns to you for advice, a Talmud comes and says, Rebbe, help me. I need direction. I need your advice. It's not enough for the Rebbe to just give his advice and walk away. He has a dual purpose to that student. And that is, number one, yes, he can give the psak and give the advice, but just as much, he has another commitment to that student, that he must pray for him as well. Pray that he succeeds. Pray that things work out for him. Both responsibilities of not just Sanhedrin, but every rabbi and rebbe in Klal Yisrael. Amazing. That's a powerful message. I'm sure you guys know that famous story of the two Menahel, the two Menahalim. The Menahel that came to the great tzaddik, Zechet Tzaddik Levracha, in Bnei Brak, and they said, we don't know if we should kick out a boy from yeshiva or not. And Reb Steinemann looked at the Menahel and he said to him, you came to ask me if you should kick out this boy? Tell me, what's the boy's name and what's his mother's name? And the Menahel says, I don't know what his mother's name is. Reb Steinemann looks at the Menahel and he says, you mean to tell me that you're holding by kicking out the boy and you weren't praying for him till now? You don't know his mother's name? And you're coming to ask me if you can kick him out? I don't know if he kicked them out. But that's what Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky said. You see from that Rashi on Gimel Amud Bet, that when they came to the Sanhedrin, it was not just to paskin on the war, but it was to pray that Klal Yisrael succeeds in the war. Because that's the obligation of a Rebbe, not just to give over information, but to take on his shoulders the success of every one of his Talmidim, as his own kids, to daven for them, to pray for them. And if you're not davening for your Talmidim, you're not doing nearly the obligation that a Sanhedrin, a Rav, a Rebbe has to his students. That's a very big message. And then finally, after they went to Achitophel and got the strategic game plan, and then they went to Sanhedrin and got the psak and the tefillot, the last step that they did before going to war, they went to the Urim V'Tumim. Now, Rabbi, I want to talk to you for a minute about this Urim V'Tumim. They would ask the Urim V'Tumim a question, and then the letters would light up, as we all know, and the answer would be given. And hopefully the Kohen Gadol would be so righteous that he'd be able to decipher the letters and decode it in the right way. Because we know that famous story with Chana and Eli HaKohen, that when Chana was by the Mishkan and she was praying, her lips were moving, no words were coming out. Eli HaKohen sees her and he thinks that this is very odd. He sees a woman crying, pleading, lips moving, but no words coming out. And he never saw that style of prayer before. So he thought that something was funny. So Eli HaKohen, says the Gemara in Berachot in the 5th Perek, asks the Urim V'Tumim, what's going on with this lady? And the Urim V'Tumim lights up the letters. And instead of him reading the letters and deciphering the word as Kishera, he ended up reading it instead as Shikora. The same letters. Just scrambled in a different way. And right away, Eli HaKohen thought that she was a drunkard. Shikora. And when he sees her lips moving and no voice coming out, right away, after looking and seeing and not deciphering and decoding the message of the Urim V'Tumim properly, automatically he jumps and thinks she's Shikora. He goes and approaches her and he scolds her, rebukes her. You come here in your drunken state to the house of God, to the Mishkan? And what does Chana tell him? Allah Adoni. you have it wrong. I am not shikora. And I was brokenhearted, pleading in front of Hashem to finally have a child after all these years. And he realized that he made the mistake. And that he decoded off the Urim v'Tumim the wrong code. And instead of reading Kishera, he read Shikora. And it was because of that he was compelled now to give her a blessing. Because when you're choshed, someone biksherim, when you actually suspect somebody in a way that was a wrongful way to suspect them, and then later on you realize that you suspected them in vain, you're obligated to give them a blessing. So she gives her a blessing that she should have a child that's going to be an unbelievable Navi in Klal Yisrael. And sure enough, that's the year that she had Shemuel Hanavi. Amazing. So this Urim v'Tumim was something very special, where you'd literally be able to ask the question, and the letters would light up, and you would get the answer, if they would win the war or not. The last stop, after they got the game plan, after they went to Sanhedrin, and they ended up getting the blessings, and the psak, and the tefillot, they asked the Urim v'Tumim, we did our ishtadlut, now we're placing our hands in God. Hashem, are you with us? If you're with us, we're going out to war to fight, we know we'll win. Let's talk a little bit about this Urim v'Tumim. Because that's literally the parasha we just read. That was literally Parashat Pikudei, the Choshen, the Urim v'Tumim, the magnificent stones. Let's talk about this for a minute. 9 out of 10 people that you go out there today and ask, what was the Urim v'Tumim? You know what they would tell you? They would tell you it's the Choshen. Kohen Gadol, he had the breastplate on his chest, and when it came time for him to ask a question, he would ask the Urim v'Tumim, he would turn to the Choshen and ask the question, and the stones, the magnificent stones that were on the Choshen, with the letters of the tribes written on each stone, the letters would light up and give an answer. But that's not true. And it's a terrible mistake. Let me tell you tonight what really the Urim v'Tumim was. And let me tell you a little bit of a history behind it, because it's really something incredible. And then from there, maybe we can bring out something very powerful tonight. Something that is very mat'im to the Et Ratzon of the month of Adar, which we spoke in the beginning of this class in the name of my Rebbe. Adar is really Aleph Dar. The Aleph, the Echad, is Dar. He's coming down to live amongst us in this month. And therefore, they're going to clear all the problems out from the people. They're going to fix up all the troubles of Klal Yisrael to make a magnificent place for the king to come down to, befitting, kivyachol, to the honor of Hashem amongst his people. Like we said, there's a Shabbat, and there's an Erev Shabbat. There's a Nisan, and there's an Adar. The month of the preparation to the great Geula of Klal Yisrael. Wow, what we could be zochet to in this month. So let's talk about this Urim v'Tumim. So what was it? If it wasn't the Choshen, then what was the Urim v'Tumim, Rabotai? Listen to this. So what was the Choshen? The Choshen, my friends, was a woven, thick piece of cloth that had on it 12 settings that were made out of gold, and inside those settings you had 12 precious stones, and on each stone the name of the 12 tribes. But what's interesting is that if I might show it to you this way, if this is the Choshen, do you see the brown? That's the breastplate, the Choshen. I can literally show you the stones. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Yosef, Benjamin. You have literally, this is the Choshen. This was that thick, woven piece of material that had the 12 stones on its front, and this material on the bottom was a flap that hung down from the Choshen, also made out of the same thick woven material as the portion of the Choshen itself. But then this flap of the woven material that fell down was actually bent back and folded up in the back of the Choshen, creating a pocket. The Urim V'Tumim was a piece of parchment with God's name written on it that was slipped into the pocket in between the two folds of the material that the Choshen was made out of, just like so. So this is the Choshen. This is the back flap of the Choshen that hung down and that folded up, creating a pocket. The Urim V'Tumim was a parchment with written on it God's secret name, the Shem HaMforash, that was placed in the pocket, in the sleeve, in the pocket, behind the Choshen, inside that back flap. So this was the battery, in a spiritual term, that lit up the letters. When a question was asked to Urim V'Tumim, it was the Shem HaMforash that lit up the letters to give answer of prophecy. This was the real Urim V'Tumim. Where did this parchment come from, the one with God's name on it? Was it made by man? Says the Ritva in Masechet Yomah, Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Bet, that the Urim V'Tumim, this parchment with God's name on it, was written by God Himself, Kivyachol. So how did we get it? Was it like Baruch Shamar, that one day it just kind of fell down from heaven and we found it sitting somewhere in a Bet Midrash? No. This special parchment with God's great name on it, it was written by Hashem, says the Ritva. And it came down from heaven with Moshe Rabbeinu when he brought the Torah down from Shammai. Wow. So look at this. When Hashem wrote the original tablets of what we know as the incredible Luchot, which the first Luchot was written by God, He also wrote on a piece of parchment, Kivyachol, His name, the Shem HaMforash, which Moshe brought down both. Amazing. And he was instructed to take that piece of parchment with the Shem HaMforash and to place it in the inside pocket, inside the two flaps of the Choshen. And now, on the outer portion where you had the stones, when the Kohen Gadol would come now and ask the Choshen a question, the Urim V'Tumim would light up those letters to give an answer. And that's why it was called Urim V'Tumim. Urim is milashon or. It would light up the letters. But wait, that's not enough. Remember from the story of Eli Kohen, even when the letters are lit up, that doesn't mean you have your answer yet. It could still be messed up. So you also need Tumim. Tumim is this incredible siyata dishmaya given to the one reading or decoding the letters that are lit up to decode it in the right way and not in the wrong way. That's Tumim. That he should understand the real message as the letters are lit up. So in that story of Eli Kohen and Hannah, he had the Urim part, the letters lit up, but he didn't have the Tumim. He did not understand the message right. He read it as Shikora instead of Kishera. Amazing. This is the Urim V'Tumim. Now guys, now that we understand what the Urim V'Tumim is, I want to talk to you about this Choshen. The Choshen that we just read about in this past parasha. The way the Torah describes it to us is that the Choshen had these magnificent stones that were placed inside settings made out of gold, attached to the thick woven piece of material. That was the breastplate of the Kohen sat on his chest with that flap folded up in the back as we spoke. Amazing. Do you know how the Torah refers to the stones that were placed on the inside of those settings, the Avnei Shoham, the Avnei Miluim. It's amazing. Listen to those words. We call the most precious stones in the world stones that needed to be brought by angels from Gan Eden. That's where they got the stones from. And these magnificent precious stones, they were so precious and so magnificent that there would be no possible price tag on such stones. These 12 magnificent precious stones were brought from Gan Eden to be placed in the Choshen. What does the Torah call these precious stones? Avnei Shoham, Avnei Miluim. Avnei Miluim? Ask from Shmuel Birnbaum, Zechet Tzadik L'Bracha, the great Rosh Yeshiva of the Mir Yeshiva. Avnei Miluim? Do you know what that means? Avnei Miluim, filler stones. Stones that fill a space. That's amazing. That's what you call those precious stones? Priceless. No money in the world can buy you one of them. And you know how the Torah refers to these priceless diamonds, these priceless precious stones? Filler stones. Avnei Miluim. Stones that fill a cavity. Stones that fill a setting. That's the way you call these magnificent stones. That they just fill space. Guys, could you imagine? Forgive me on this one. You know, guys going, after so many years, the day has come. He's been dating and dating. He finally meets the right girl. And he turns to her. And he's about to get engaged. He says, honey, I'm going to take you down to 47th Street. I have a friend in the business. He's going to put out in front of you all the different, really modern, up-to-date, beautiful settings. You'll pick out your setting. And the girls love to pick out their settings. They would love to have that say of what they would always dreamt their setting to be like. And you bring her down to 47th and your friend puts out all these different settings. And, one is the Tiffany setting and the other one has little spots for baguettes on the side. And the other one has, something going up and down the sides of the actual. And she's looking through the settings and they're great. Wow, magnificent. She picks out, this is the setting I want. And you say to her, okay, great. You got the setting? All right, now I just got to find something to fill in the middle. What is that? You joking? You think that engagement's going to go anywhere? you think the guy's going to stay engaged? I mean, like what? I got you the setting. Now I just got to get a filler stone. I'll get a filler stone. Because the setting right now looks pretty empty because it's just air in the middle. I'm going to go out and get you a filler stone. And like this, we can get engaged. Woof! I'm so happy you picked out that setting. She's going to look at you like you landed from Mars. What in the world is up with this guy? He wants to get me a filler stone? And he's all going crazy about the setting. Bro, the setting is only there to hold the stone. I mean, you got it backwards. I mean, thank you. I like the setting, but I like the setting because it's going to hold the dream stone in a certain way that is going to accentuate its brilliance. And I'm going to be able to look at it for the rest of my life in a way that I'll remember this moment that me and you had in our engagement, in our wedding, in our marriage. We got it all backwards. Avnei Miluim, that's what you call the stones that were inside the settings of the Choshen, filler stones. This is the question of the great Rabbi Shmuel Birnbaum, Zechet Tzadik L'Bracha, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Mir Yeshiva, my Mesader Kiddushin. Answers the great Rabbi Shmuel Birnbaum, Zechet Tzadik L'Bracha. What an answer. He says, there's no question in the world that the diamond has its own magnificence. And it is the Ikar. There's no question about that. That's not even the question. But says Rabbi Shmuel Birnbaum, I want you to know something. When you pick up the setting and you look at it, it looks completely incomplete because it's still empty. The moment you take that beautiful diamond stone and put it inside the setting, now the setting looks complete. Says Rav Shmuel Birnbaum, in the eyes of Torah, true beauty is not the beauty of the person himself. True beauty is the beauty that you bring out when you complete others. And therefore, even the most magnificent stone in the world, says Torah, yes, it's the most magnificent stone, it's priceless. But you know what we're more inspired by? In the beauty of how it's able to fill and bring out the best in something else. Till now, that setting was completely incomplete and empty. The minute you put that magnificent stone inside the setting, it completed it in perfection. Says the Torah, you could be the most magnificent stone in the world, but you're not beautiful in God's eyes until you complete somebody else's setting. Wow, 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 wow. This is something. Avnei Miluim. Of course they're magnificent. And of course they're priceless. But in the eyes of the Torah, their beauty is that they are filler stones. They completed somebody's emptiness. And that in God's eyes is the most beautiful thing that a Jew can do. And if you think about it for a minute, it has a lot of depth. Because we were born with incredible talent. We were born in incredible intellect. We were born with all different types of gifts that we have going for us. But wait one second, I want to ask you a question. Did you earn those gifts? Did you earn that talent? Did you somehow or other earn that intellect? No, Hashem gave you the intellect. Hashem gave you those talents. Hashem gave you those gifts. So how is that defined as your beauty when it's someone else that gave it to you? You want to be beautiful? Go out and give somebody else something. That belongs to you. The minute you step up and complete someone else, that's your beauty. But what do you mean? My talents, my this, my that, my intellect, my smarts. Yes, all that is great. And you're beautiful in those ways. But that beauty doesn't belong to you. That was given to you. When you go and complete somebody else's setting, now you're a diamond. Only then are you a diamond in the eyes of Torah. This is an incredible concept. Ay, 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 ay. Yeah. You know how many people out there are settings who are completely incomplete without a precious stone like you coming along and completing them? Not just in marriage. How many times have you looked out beyond the tip of your own nose and seen people in need with big, big gaping holes in their life? Big troubles, big issues. And they needed a guy like you to step up and come along and shoulder their problems. And at that moment that you were able to step in and fill their void and bring out their best, you are now a diamond because you're an Avnei Miluim, a filler stone. In Torah, that's the most precious stone in the world, a filler stone. We're living in these times. We're living in times where so many people are broken. We're living in times where so many people have troubles. And they need somebody. They need a diamond to come along. A diamond to come along and really fill their void and care enough to be selfless enough to step up and want to place their beauty inside their emptiness. And at that moment, they're literally able to bring out their best. They complete them. That, in the eyes of Torah, is true beauty. When you're bringing out the beauty of other people. It's a very interesting thing. If you take a look at that Rashi, in the beginning of Shemot, Rashi says that when Hashem was counting the different Jews, or the Jewish people, the different tribes, Rashi says over there that Klal Yisrael is compared to Kochavim, the stars. And it's very interesting. Why from everything are we compared to stars? But according to this now, it's brilliant. Because stars were not created at first. At first, it was only the sun and the moon. But then after the moon complained, Hashem told the moon, Taktin et atzmech. If you're complaining that there are two luminaries in the sky, and how could two do the same job? So God said to the moon, make yourself small. Make yourself small. And the moon began to cry. And Hashem, kiviyachol, felt bad for the moon. So what did Hashem do? He created stars. This was a creation that was only there to bring out the light of somebody else. The stars were created to aid the moon, to bring her greater light back to the world after she was made small, after she complained to God. Says Hashem, I want the Jewish people to be like the Kochavim. What did Hashem say to Abraham Avinu? Vayotze oto achutza. He took him out from the tent and he told him, Ko yeh zarecha, like this your children will be. And he showed him the stars. Just like the stars were not created for their independent light. They were created to help and aid the light of the moon to get back on its feet after it suffered a blow. It was told to make itself small. And the stars came to pick her back up and put her back up on her feet and shine again. So too, Klal Yisrael, you're like the stars. Your beauty is not your own light. Your beauty is the filler stone. When you're able to complete and bring out the best in other people. Amazing. You know, there are many different versions to the story I'm about to tell you now. I heard 3 different versions to the story. 3 different Rebbes over the years. Would you believe it? The same story, 3 different versions. I don't know which one to go with, so I'm just going to go with the latest one that I heard. Hopefully, like in the Gemara, that they always went after the Batra. You know, they always went after the rabbi that was from the later generations, because somehow or other he encompassed the teachings of the earlier generations and came down with the bottom line maskana. So I'm going to give you the latest version of this story that I heard, but I want you to open your hearts and hear this. A man came to the great Baal Shem Tov, and he said to the Baal Shem Tov, I want so much to be able to meet Eliyahu Navi. I want so much to meet Eliyahu Navi. The Baal Shem says, yeah, okay. If you want it that much, I'll share with you the secret. I'll tell you where you can find them. Go to this and this town, neighboring town, and here's the address, and here's the house you're going to find them. You'll see a broken door. Knock on the door. Spend Shabbat there, but don't come empty-handed. Before you go there, go to the marketplace and fill up baskets of food and fruit and wine and bread, like literally Su'udat Melech, and bring all that great food to this broken home in a nearby town. Here's the address. Go there for Shabbat, and you'll meet Eliyahu Navi. The man was beside himself. He was ecstatic. So he went to the marketplace on Friday and he filled up Su'udat Melech from anything you can imagine, all the delicacies. And then he traveled over to that next town and he came, sure enough, to this broken down house. He sees the broken door. He thinks to himself, this is where Eliyahu Navi is going to be. He expected, something magnificent, proper for a Navi. He knocks on the broken door, and a woman who looks like she went through the hard knocks of life answers the door. And she looks at him and she says, yes, how can I help you? And he's trying to look over her shoulder to see who's in the house. And he says, is your husband home? Thinking. And she says, no, my husband passed away years ago. I'm an almanah with orphans with children. He says, well, can I stay here for Shabbat? Do you have a guest house, something? I brought some food for Shabbat. Can I stay here? She said, listen, I can give you the guest house for the Shabbat. You could stay with us. And we would love to eat the food with you. We have nothing to eat. I said, okay. So he stayed in the guest house, and the meals they ate together. Friday night he comes home from shul. The table was decked out with all the delicacies and food. The children never saw food like this in their lives. And they were like jumping up and down like it was some sort of a holiday. And they were eating, and they were singing, and they were happy. And meanwhile, this guy, after making kiddush for the family, his one eye is on the door, and the other eye is on the table, and he's waiting to see where is Eliyahu going to jump out from. You know, he's going to come out of the closet. He's going to knock in the middle of the night. He's getting into position to wait for the great Eliyahu. You read the Pismon Saturday night, right? Eliyahu Tishbi. Ashrei mi. Praiseworthy is a person that he gives shalom to. Praiseworthy is a person that he answers you shalom. He was waiting for that shalom aleichem from the great Eliyahu. The meal came and the meal went. No Eliyahu. He's thinking to himself, what's going on? Why did Baal Shem Tov send me here? I mean, this is a mistake. He said, probably tomorrow. The next day he goes to shul. He comes back for lunch. He's eating lunch. One eye on the door, one eye on the closets, on the backyard. He's looking, scouring, looking, trying to see, where's he coming? Nothing. Shabbat comes, Shabbat goes. Motzei Shabbat. He says goodbye to the family, thanks them for giving him the guest house, the outhouse to be able to stay in. And he goes back to Mezbush. He comes back to the Baal Shem. And he says, Rabbi, lo zachiti. Lo zachiti. I did everything you said, with the address, the food, everything. It wasn't there. Baal Shem says, what? What do you mean? He was right there. It was right in front of your nose. It was right there. I said, Rabbi, I looked. I stayed up all night. I said, Tehillim. That's nothing. No show. I said, that's impossible. He was right there. It wasn't. Baal Shem says, listen, go back this week and open your eyes. He goes back the next week, the basket with the food, knocks on the door. Oh, says the lady, I'm so happy. The children last week, they ate beautifully. You want to stay with us another Shabbat? He says, please, can I? She gives him again the guest house. That Friday night, he's eating, waiting, nothing. Shabbat day, nothing. Motzei Shabbat, he's now frustrated. It was my averot, it was my this, it was my that. He goes back to the Baal Shem, he says, Baal Shem says, you didn't see him. He was right there in front of you at the tip of your nose. You didn't see him, he was looking right at you. How could you not see him? He said, okay, just try one more time, but this time you're going to see him. Baal Shem tells her, this time you're going to see him. He said, Kevin, try one more time. He puts all the food together the next Friday. He comes with the baskets of food. He comes up to the same house. He's about to knock on the broken door, and he hears through the door the voices of the young children crying. Apparently they didn't eat all week. And he hears one child say to the mother, Ima, do you think this Shabbat we're going to eat? Do you think this Shabbat we'll have something to eat like the last few weeks? Real food? And the mother says to the children, my children, I don't know. The last 2 weeks Hashem sent us Eliyahu Navi. He fed us. He sat with us. He made kiddush for us. I don't know if this week he's going to come back or not. And then it hit him. Oh. And he knocks on the door. And the broken door opens. And the young children come running to the door, seeing him with the baskets. And they point him and they scream, Eliyahu Navi! Eliyahu Navi! That's right. You want to see Eliyahu Navi in your lifetime? Go out and be somebody else's Eliyahu Navi. Avnei Miluim. You're a diamond only when you fill the setting and the void of another person. Thank you for listening.